It's not like we weren't just stream is live. Hey, stream is live. Hey, Star Wars fans and Rule the Galaxy fans. We are presently live on Twitter, on Facebook. So if you're around the interwebs right now, you can come check us out, talk to us, send us messages. Those will pop up to me, and I will try to do my best to read them to uh, you guys as well as our guest, Mr. Jack Harvey. Jack, thanks for joining us tonight.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. This is, I know I was checking out your new home or soon to be home
Yeah.
recently. I am in my new house right now. This is the first time I've done a show here. So I'm a little nervous about the sound, the internet. I'm hoping it all goes well because I've really just thrown this together. I've got a sign behind me and a bookshelf behind me, and that's pretty much it.
It
So
sounds okay so far. You're sounding good.
good, good, good. Well, overall, before we even start into things, how are you doing? How are things going with you and everything in your world?
How's it going? It's been a little bit of an unusual season, truthfully. It ended a little earlier than we thought it should. That being said, the off season for me so far has been a pretty good time. I went back to the UK for a little bit just to hang out with some family, and then my sister actually gets married in a couple of weeks, so we're heading
Really?
back. Yeah, heading back there again. So yeah, I mean, it's been a good time. Work's been a little stressful, but overall, life's still pretty good. To be fair.
Well, that's good to hear. You know what? There's a lot worse things we could be doing. My dad always used to say, you could be a ditch digger, right? I mean, we have to face those adversities and work our way through them, but life could be worse.
Well, the thing I probably learned the last couple of years, it could always get a little bit worse. So even if it's maybe not where you want it to be, I think a little bit of gratitude and appreciation, really carries a lot of weight. And I saw you earlier this week.
Yes.
This is the second time we're getting to hang out this week.
Well, yeah, I mean, one live and in person and one virtually. And I tell you what, like I said, I loved seeing your place, and I love that it's right down the road from my favorite Italian bakery. So I was able to stop in there and grab some pastries to bring home to my wife.
What's the
Uh,
pastry of choice?
she likes it's in America, it's just a chocolate croissant, but in Italy, it's a
Oh.
cornetto, and so that's her choice. I love all the little cookies with the
Mm,
jams in them because they're just not overly sweet. It's just like a nice almond-based cookie with a
yeah,
little bit
yeah.
of cherry or something like that in it. You get going where it's too sweet, and the next thing you know, you're just like sugar overload. So,
You get a
uh,
coffee to go with it.
a little coffee. Got my daughter a gelato. So it was a good overall day. So
Yeah, that was a nice day. Maddie texted me. She's like, I got a special guest, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, who is this guest going to be? And then we, spent a couple hours together, and it was a laugh.
yeah, it was a great time. And for those of you who don't know, my daughter is, oh gosh, almost full term pregnant right now. Like any day now she could go. So I was thinking Jack, when he saw a special guest was coming to visit, that maybe he thought she already had the baby and she was bringing a newborn, but no such luck. She's due anytime. So we're all sitting here patiently waiting for grandchild number two in the Molinaro household. So it's exciting, but it's been a while since you've been on the show. This is episode
Yeah,
235. You were kind enough to come on episode 200 when we kind of did a big blowout celebration. As far as Star Wars, gosh, it's been 30 episodes ago. So,
mm,
we had some downtime, but then we had Ahsoka pop up. We haven't really, you and I spoke a little bit about it, but I wanted to get your thoughts and feelings on the series, the characters, everything like that. Now that the 8 episodes are over with, what's your overall feel on the Ahsoka series on Disney Plus?
oh, I thought it was just brilliant. Honestly, I thought the first two, honestly, almost from the off, and we chatted about this in the new house that Maddie is helping me decorate. And anyway, down one of the stairs, I said it'd be really cool to have the entrance titles roll as if you're going down the stairs, which led me to my very first thing about Ahsoka that threw me off guard and how that was different.
Oh yeah.
And to be honest with you, I'm of all the parts of the series, that was maybe the only part where I'm like, huh, did you need to make that change?
Yeah. You would think with Dave Filoni, who's such a traditionalist, right? Like he
Yeah,
learned from George himself. You would have thought he would have said, "Hey, let's put the scroll in as usual."
it
Yeah.
doesn't. I don't know, like that part of it. I was like, oh, it's just different, but it wasn't like, oh, that's great. I was like, oh, that's different. And then I thought the first two episodes were really designed at just trying to give people who haven't watched any of the Clone Wars arc, any of the Rebels arc, basically the background of the characters.
Yes.
So obviously, I'm sure for most people listening, they had probably watched that. So maybe the first couple episodes were slower tempo. But man, when the series hit its stride, it was
Oh,
just one of them ones where like, and me and Joey had texted about it and we're like, I think maybe it could have been like the best episode of a Star Wars show I've ever seen. And then you're like, there's no way next week's better. And it just seemed to be from like, for me anyway, like episode 4, maybe 5 onward, they just notched up every time. And I just thought it was great. I thought it was really, and it was just, I just thought it was wonderful.
well, good. Well, I mean, you and Joey are the same age, and so you guys were both of the age where Clone Wars characters and the prequels were really in your wheelhouse,
Yeah, big
and
time.
so seeing those throwbacks to a young Ahsoka being there with an Anakin on the battlefield, just amazing, right? I mean, I am an older guy, and I was getting all giddy seeing Hayden Christensen in the
Yeah,
Clone Wars outfits. I mean, that blew me away. Then the holograms of him teaching her things in the ship.
it was
I mean,
just cool.
it was just
It,
fantastic.
and honestly, I think the work that's been done recently has made episodes 1, 2, and 3 feel better. And I like that these characters and the actors who have had to absorb some abuse, probably, and some, fandom negativity, because I can't think of a better word on the fly that would be appropriate for a live stream. Uh, I love seeing them finally be able to be praised for the work that they're doing. And I can't remember the chap's name who played Jar Jar Binks. I know we're talking about Ahsoka, but people like him who have had to weather
Yes.
so much of a negative storm, seeing them finally get to be able to be celebrated in the way that, as a fandom, I guess I like to hope that we would. It was
Yeah.
just cool. So they bring Hayden Christensen back, and you see him almost through like every phase of his transition. And I thought that was cool because it's amazing how many people who just straight watch the movies are like, wait, who is Ahsoka? And you're like, oh well,
Right.
let me tell you, and it's a really interesting character arc. But I think for anyone who maybe watched Clone Wars, maybe thought her character was it was borderline annoying. And I mean, again, Dave Filoni was able to just completely change the trajectory path of this character to being, probably one of the more interesting people in the whole, Star Wars galaxy, I guess we should say, opposed to universe. And I mean, the obvious thing about the series that had been prepped from, what was it, season 2 of Mandalorian was Thrawn. And for
Right.
someone who's read the Legend books and, read his own trilogy books and stuff like that, I mean, I feel like he's the most interesting villain that Star Wars has access to. And I actually, again, can't remember the actor's name, but he actually was in a couple of episodes of Sherlock with Benedict
Really?
Cumberbatch. Yeah. And I remember thinking at the time, he's a really good actor. He would be great in Star Wars. And then when I read about Thrawn's character, you're like, oh, that's pretty interesting. And then he voiced him, and I think he
Right.
played the part
On
very
Rebels, yeah.
well. as well. So I don't know. I feel like the the existing characters got represented brilliantly live action, and then you get new characters who did the same. And I just feel like we're in when a Star Wars project has planning and positivity around it and the right people in place, it's still the best for me. It's still the best fandom and the best series that's out there.
What so I'm, you know, well, not growing up, but watching the transition of the Clone Wars to Rebels to this, I was one of those ones that said, "Gosh, I'm not really sure. Is Rosario Dawson going to be able to pull off what Ashley Eckstein did for all those
Sure,
years?" And you know what? It's been a very smooth transition. I think she's doing a great job. Obviously, her character was much more mellow and sad and really in deep thought in the first few episodes because she had a lot to get through herself.
sure.
Thinking about her training with Anakin and whether she was going in the right direction. I love how she made that transition from always being down, always having her arms crossed, and being in kind of dingy clothing to almost doing the Gandalf the White
Yeah,
kind of setup to where she went through her trial and tribulation and she
sure.
came out on the other side as a much more positive, upbeat character, right?
Yeah, the only thing that maybe confused me now is like trying to understand the timeline of when she fit into Mandalorian season
Hmm.
2 and kind of like where we are now is probably the only thing that was
So
kind of left a little unclear.
the only thing that I know for sure is when the X-wing pilot Travis, I think Captain Travis,
Yeah.
came into that court hearing for Hera. He said, "What about what happened with Mandalore and Moff Gideon, which just happened in chapter 3 of or season 3 of Mandalorian?" So that's the only tie-in that I know of how the timing works.
Mm.
I I'm guessing before that happened, she had just been with Luke at the academy, those kind of things. But yeah, I it would be really great to kind of see it laid out date by
Just
date.
a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah. I mean, that would kind of be nice. But I read early on, and I mean, I read the same stuff on the internet that everybody else has access to, right? But the the executive team at Disney and at Star Wars loved the series so much. That's actually what helped get Dave Filoni his own movie, and
Really? Okay.
that's only what I read. And then when you see this story that is being written, and it's like of the animated shows that I love, Rebels I kind of liked. I didn't love it, and I've actually gone back and rewatched it, and I don't know what it is. I just can't quite get into some of it. However,
Into
the
some of what? I'm sorry, I missed that. Oh,
Into
Rebels.
Rebels.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know why. Um, and but I love the final season of the Clone Wars, which I think is where you start to see that transition for Ahsoka go from being just like a Padawan and kind of can do whatever she wants whenever she wants, kind of deal, to then having to process what Anakin becomes. And then when they tie in the Tales of the Jedi and you see like some of the extra backstory to that, seeing her live action with her own show, and then I'm not a big Lord of the Rings fan, which I think some people find funny because I like Harry Potter, Marvel, Star Wars, not into Lord of the Rings, and I was seeing myself thinking, oh my god, we're having a Gandalf moment here, like something's going to happen, and then the next thing you know, she's going to be wearing white, and it happened. Probably wasn't like a crazy revelation for anybody, but I don't know. I just thought the pace of the show or series with everything combined around it, I just thought it was just brilliant, and it's been left in such a way that they can take it now. I feel like in so many great directions, knowing that a main story has already played out, so you're kind of working within a little bit of a parameter.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, it's kind of exciting to be in an uncharted
I
part of Star Wars history.
Yeah, I agree. So a couple things. One, they popped into my head while you were talking. Ahmad Best was the one who played Jar Jar Binks, and he came back and played the Jedi during was it
Saving
Mandalorian?
Grogu. Let's
There you go.
go.
So we had I'm my best, and then Mickelson, and I always forget whether he or his brother are Lars or Mads. There's Mads Mikkelsen and Lars Mikkelsen, but one of them played um, in Rogue
Yeah,
One,
it was
and then the other one,
Mads, I think.
okay, and the other one did this one. I always mess. I know the last name, but I always mess up the other stuff. So when I looked at the other characters, I thought I thought they cast Sabine 100% perfect. I thought they knocked it
Yep.
out of the park with Ezra. I thought
Yep.
Thrawn was a great choice. Obviously, I already liked the Morgan Elsbeth character who was against her. Then you add in um, Balin Skull and Shin Hati, who I thought were two of the coolest new characters that again you can go in all kinds of directions with him. Now we know, rest in peace, Ray Stevenson, who played Balin Skull, but I have to think they're going to recast him because that character was too important and valuable to the storyline here in Ahsoka. What were some of your thoughts on some of those?
I mean, honestly, I kind of would echo everything that you had said. I also love seeing David Tennant come
Oh yes,
back as well. Um, I thought everybody, I think seeing Ezra live action made me like him more when I go back and watch the animated series. I think it was his character in particular that kind of irritated me in Rebels on the whole. But in terms of everyone they cast for live action, I mean, what happened to Ray was so sad because his performance, I think, for me, he was like nearly the standout of the show.
right. He and Hu Yang, David Tennant. I thought both of those two knocked it out of the park.
And what I think is interesting about his character is there's so much that can be explored with him. You know, like who
Yes.
was he in throughout the Clone Wars era? Like
Right.
I literally have no idea who he is. And then when people were trying to, I saw that thing going around where they're like, oh, he was the youngling in the, you know, in the council room. I'm like, I mean,
Right.
I don't think the timeline works for you, bro, on that one, but it's cool. Nice try. And then, you know, big Easter egg at the end was seeing the Mortis gods,
Oh,
which again, to be like, you needed to, I think, to really appreciate that, you needed to have watched Clone Wars and
yes.
Rebels because otherwise you're looking at it going, cool statue without really any of the extra context. And the fact that you saw the brother, but the sister wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, what people have also speculated what else could be there, which is very deep Star Wars. Well, I don't even know. It's not even canon, I don't think. I think it's still in the Legends category of, I can't even say the name, is like Abeloth,
Mm-hmm.
maybe.
Abeloth. Yep.
I just think it's so interesting that it's kind of been left in that way. But he also, and I know people have said that in the world between worlds, it wasn't Anakin full strength, and it was really more of a
Right.
teaching moment. But like, Ahsoka cannot defeat Balin Skull. Like they fought at least twice,
Mm-hmm.
and neither time did it seem like she was even remotely close. So this is a guy with immense power, force knowledge, who I don't think you could necessarily say is a Sith. Like he's a bit
Right.
darker than a Grey Jedi, I would say. He's kind of split that, you know, that dark side of the Force a little bit, but I just thought that was a standout character. I wouldn't have been sad to see what they were doing with his apprentice a little bit more. I kind of feel like she's been left a
Yeah.
little out there, kind of not sure exactly what her role now is, but with another season to be able to develop that, I think it could be really fun too.
I agree. I think, well, first of all, Diamond Figs is in on the chat with us here. Thanks for coming in. Glad you're happy and looking forward to the chat. Just letting everybody know, DDoc usually runs the live shows. So I'm sitting in place of DDoc, who usually is controlling things. If I can't post up some of your messages or anything, I'll still read them out and let people know about them. So thanks for everybody who's joined in and chatting and all that. But yeah, I think one of the things you hit on was having everything wide open. Like people were saying, well, we know it's going to build to Thrawn coming back to the Star Wars galaxy, right? He's going to get there somehow. But if you think about it, in if they're using some of the little pieces from Heir to the Empire trilogy that we've read, if they're taking little bits and instead of Luke being the main character, okay, maybe Ahsoka's now in Luke's role in there. I mean, Thrawn's still here,
Sure.
right? Instead of all the cloned troopers that he was working on in those series, now he's got maybe zombie troopers. And instead of Joris Sabayoth, now he's got some Night Sisters who are playing kind of that role. But in all those things, you mentioned Shin Hati, there was the Mara Jade character who was a very dark, very evil kind of in the beginning of the that trilogy. You saw Ahsoka reach out and say, "Give me your blade, I can help you," right? And I'm thinking to myself, is she going to have this anger in her? And when her master leaves her, is she going to look for somebody to be a mentor and give her the direction she needs and maybe flip back to the other side and fill that Mara Jade role? I don't know. I was just brainstorming while watching the show and trying to correlate it all back together. But it seemed like there was a lot of pieces that could be put together like that.
I agree. Do you know one of the nice things about the show was you could feel what was building.
Mm-hmm.
But in that finale, I got to admit, for a decent chunk of it, I was like, they're not leaving this place. Like, not even like Ahsoka and Sabine and Ezra. Like, no one is leaving this place. Like, something's going to happen. And okay, if you had read some of these bits and it followed a natural thought progression, I feel like we all could have realized that he was going to escape. But also, like, Thorne's character deserves the escape because he is like a tactical mastermind. And really, the only battles that you see him lose, I really think you can just chalk up to the fact that he doesn't have the Force.
Very true.
Like, no tactician has probably factored in Purgles coming in and, grabbing his ship and blasting him off to somewhere else. But I thought it was interesting that everything's obvious once you've seen it, but for a period in that episode, you're like, well, clearly Ahsoka and Sabine are going to get there because, like, they're the goodies, right? And they always get there. And I think the fact that they didn't, or maybe it was Ezra instead, just felt like it gave the show substance.
I like that it left it with kind of an Into the Empire Strikes Back kind of feel. How the bad guys pretty much got where they wanted to get to and got what they want out of the battles and everything like that. The good guys weren't down for the count, but they definitely had not gotten to where they needed to be. And here you have the lead character for this series sitting in another galaxy as season 1 ends, right?
I think it's interesting as well, though, that and you use like that analogy, like, no, yes, you could say that like Thrawn won, but I kind of don't feel like anybody has really lost because like Sabine and Ahsoka have now, back to being mates again. Ezra's gone home. Thrawn's now in the main, galaxy. Seems like Baylan Skoll's off doing something that clearly he felt was his purpose.
Yeah.
Shin's the only one. I'm like, where are we taking her character? Like, but really, I think it set it up because even though, let's call them the good guys, just because or like the main protagonists, I guess. Although they might not have got exactly where they wanted to be, they're not like out of it.
Correct.
And I think the way that it's been left, I just think is really interesting and fun. Hey, and then there was
Brent.
3.
That's right.
Hello. How are we doing?
Who's the father? Who's the son? Who's the daughter? Let's just establish this early.
Don't even talk about Mortis around.
Okay,
Brent.
so no. I mean, we can go into Mortis, like, because I needed to explain to me because it's so. I'm a simple man trying to make my way in the universe, and so the whole Mortis thing, like, I consider myself to be an intelligent dude, but it's way beyond me. So you tell me, who is the father? Like, is somebody taking the place of the father, the son, and the daughter? Or yeah, like, what's your thought on that, Jack?
Oh, it's a you could almost do a show maybe just on that alone. I mean, so they're as a trio. I mean,
Yeah.
essentially, they got introduced to the Star Wars world or fans. I can't even remember what season it was of the Clone Wars. That was my first introduction to them. And basically, you've got the daughter who represents the light side of the Force. You've got the son who represents the dark side of the Force, and the father who ultimately controls both and keeps both in check, and therefore creates balance. Now, if you want the spoilers on what happens in the show, I can give you them.
So at this point, I feel like, I mean, we were doing live shows and talking about it right afterwards, continuing on live. So,
okay.
Spoiler, we're what, 2 weeks past, 3 weeks past?
Yeah, we're good.
So
we're past spoiler alert territory.
Essentially, naturally a fight breaks out, and the father has to kills himself to keep his son at least on their home planet, right? Or I can't even remember what the planet was called. Have I got that right?
It was Mortis.
Mortis.
You mean the current? Current Peridia, but yeah, Mortis, yeah.
And at least in the Clone Wars, it was on Mortis. So the father ends up killing himself, but he's also the only person who can control them. Now, what was interesting in the Clone Wars show was Anakin was essentially being asked by the father to stay because he also was the only, that we know at the time, he was able to control both the son and the daughter. He wanted him to stay to be able to create balance for the universe. Clearly that didn't happen. The daughter dies, or she dies.
She dies.
She gives her life
to the owl, right?
To Ahsoka. Yeah. So then, what's interesting is if you watch Rebels, then and throughout some of the Clone Wars, even you see the owl, which is meant to be representing the daughter, stick with Ahsoka all the time. So I saw this theory essentially that on Mortis that Baylan Skoll could become the father. You've got Ahsoka, who's the re-embodiment of the daughter, and then maybe that's what they're leading with Shin's character, is what I saw.
So Shin being the brother?
Shin being the brother, yeah.
Okay. Being
because
the dark side, the anger side of the Force.
I can't, because to be honest with you, the brother and the daughter in the show were complete equal. And to me, Baylan and Ahsoka aren't quite on the same level. Baylan's just a notch up for me. Yep. So I don't think that he could be the brother, because I think it would be too overpowering to the light side.
Okay.
Well, and
I just don't know who else the father is.
Yeah, without Anakin, let's face it, they're looking for that father figure, because Anakin was being asked by the father on Mortis to take his role.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like, hey, you're the only one strong enough. Take this over for me and balance it. And now that he's gone, and if Baylan is stronger than Ahsoka, it kind of puts him in that role a little bit of being that father. And since he knows the mythology of it, right? He knew to go look for it. He had that sense or that feeling that something was there. So
I think my favorite line out of the whole Rebels show was when Ahsoka says there's always a little bit of truth in legends. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like that tied in a lot of the legends that we're not allowed to class as canon anymore. I just thought it was really interesting on Peridia that the daughter's statue was gone. It had crumbled. And I don't know if they had said that Mortis and Peridia were exactly the same place. I don't think that has been confirmed. No. So then it could be two places. You've got Mortis, which could still exist, and if this isn't another galaxy, then they exist there too. I would love to not do the time jump and the multiverse stuff. Marvel have got their own thing going on with that, and it gets complicated enough. I just thought it was interesting because of everything that we've seen so far. That essentially the daughter has been re-embodied by Ahsoka. And then when we finally see even just statues of these people or gods, she's missing. And now Ahsoka is conveniently stuck there. just I don't know. Doesn't seem.
The thing. Go. Oh, D-Doc's here.
He's
Hi,
back.
D-Doc.
So why
I
would
think
why?
what,
Oh, sorry, I'm trying. Like, why would Balin kick her to the side though? So like in all of this conversation, why does Balin kick Shin to the side? I think
ultimately,
it's because she's Rose Tico or Finnick Shand in Boba Fett. Like they had all of this potential and they turned out to be caricatures. Like at this point, I feel like she's just a caricature. But go ahead. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say.
I can give you my quick, just kind of think it's interesting. I mean, Joe, you already kind of like hit on it. She's already been offered help and rejected it. Like, I think she either isn't mature enough yet or just has like a lot of dark side passion that pushes her towards the dark side more so than Balin does. He seems to have a good grasp of being able to like do both for what is ultimately his end goal. And he says he's been training her for a greater purpose,
right?
But really, and I guess you can apply this with a lot of different ways if you want. For that trio to work, there has to be three. You have one person who's able to equally control both, and therefore you can't have too much light in the galaxy without some darkness. And it's not going to be Sabine because she's just hadn't done her character arc where we were all wondering on the opening credit scenes why her helmet kept flashing red. I don't know if you guys kept worrying about that, but I was like, oh my God, she's gonna be bad.
I didn't pick that up at all.
Yeah, I didn't pick that up either.
In that like opening sequence where they show all the helmets, hers was always on the red swing, not like the gold swing.
Nearly always. At least every time I like really paid attention to it, it was always red. I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna be bad. So I just feel like you've got three people on that planet now. And you need the light and the dark to go together to really create the balance. And I just don't see the brother being Balin.
No.
And I don't know.
I mean, let's face it. Sabine has already turned against Ahsoka quite a while ago before this show started, right? When Ahsoka said to her during this season, can I count on you? When it comes down to it, I'm going to be able to count on you. And she said, of course. And then she turned on her then and went along with Balin. There might be a little mischief and deceit in Sabine a little bit. She does come from Mandalore, which is a warring, battling, society. So
I totally agree that I think she's a very complex character. But I still feel like they made a point is to tee it up for the audience, whether you want to like her or whether you don't want to like her. And they teed it up that, she's just this, going to do what she wants to do. But the whole time, I mean, she's really doing it to try and find Ezra. Yeah. So even when something bad is happening, it's coming out of a good place. And then I don't want people to attack me in the comments saying so was Anakin, by the way, but I don't know. I don't feel like they would have spent so much time on that arc for her to eventually just be bad. The only thing I kind of was unsure about as well, is there a romance there between Sabine and Ezra? Because it kind of was teed up like that. And from the briefest moment, I'm like,
so have you watched the Rebels? Like you said you didn't necessarily get into it, but have you watched like season 1, season 2 of the Rebels?
I've rewatched it several times. I mean, even if I'm not like into a Star Wars show, I'm still into a Star Wars show.
Understood. Because there was what is it, season 1 when
Ezra was
first
head over
encountered
heels
Sabine.
Yeah.
He was like he stumbled over himself. He was like drooling over her. There was it was a big sister, like not necessarily a big sister because that gets creepy. It's like that is like if he was she was the love interest for him. Like he was trying to suit her. He tried to impress her at every turn. Joe, I mean,
but by the end of the 4 seasons, you could kind of see she was kind of looking at him like he's changed. He's grown up. He's become a leader.
Classic romance story.
She's the one who let him sneak away and go to Thrawn while everybody else wanted him to stay in that meeting. Remember? He leaves the lightsaber and says, I got to take care of this. And she lets him sneak out to go get the Thrawn. I don't know if you guys remember right at the end there before he leaves, but she's the one who let it happen. And so I don't know. I mean, it could play either way. I would be okay with it. It doesn't bother me. I would be fine with them having a relationship.
I think it bothers me a little bit because it just feels a little easy.
Yeah.
You know, like it's a little easy.
Can't we just be friends without having ships? Like I'm sick of like any sort of inkling of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce loving each other turns into this like media frenzy about the two. What was it? Started with Ben and Jennifer, the whole Bennifer situation, Ben and Jennifer #1 in like the 2000s. Like it was. Can we get past? Can we just have a friendship? I mean, there was like Ted Lasso. We love Ted Lasso, but they wanted to make a ship out of the two, Roy Kent and Jamie Tart. Like people want there to be these relationships, and can't we just be friends?
For those of you,
that's not bad.
For those of you who
better than I could come up with on the spot there,
who have not watched When Harry Met Sally, Harry tells Sally, no adult man and woman can just be friends. You're always thinking about sleeping with them.
Yeah.
It just can't be. So, you know, he even says, I think you're the first woman that I'm friends with that I haven't wanted to sleep with. So, I mean, I'm going to go with the Billy Crystal theory right there on that. Go ahead, D-Doc.
Ezra's also just been hanging out with a bunch of Ninja Turtles for years, you know, so. And
that's why he's counting on her.
You know.
That's why he's counting on her, okay? He needs to get back.
And
I
did not. I came in here to throw Brent on, and I'm sitting here with the headphones on. And I'm listening to Jack talking about Mortis and everything, and I'm just like, I just talked for 2 hours about Star Wars last night, and I'm locked right back in just listening to this.
Well, and I will say, D-Doc, we talked about it briefly on the one live show. I think Filoni has some cojones to throw World Between Worlds and Mortis into this series when, as Jack stated, they had to use the first few episodes just to get people kind of caught up on where it was. And he's throwing out the big guns, right? He's throwing out things yeah.
Yeah,
so
but those are his big guns, though. Those are his big guns. Those are no, but I'm like you laugh, but like those are his babies. Like Ahsoka is his baby. A Mortis arc and the Mortis and that the World Between Worlds were his creation. So he's like, if anybody's going to be able to do it and give it the due that it's deserved, would be Filoni, because that's those are of his own mind. Like he's the one that, he had tutelage from what's his name?
George Lucas.
Yeah, I couldn't think of his name.
The maker.
I was gonna call him the maker. I just couldn't think of his real name. I was gonna say the maker.
Oh god.
What's that guy's name?
Yeah. What are we even here for?
This guy got $4 billion. Hey, to go off of this, I really enjoyed the Tales of the Jedi that we've seen so far. Now that you've mentioned like Balin and Shin and those characters. Well, I saw that
for season 2.
You guys think it would be great to see some background on both of them in a Tales of the Jedi kind of animated series?
I thought that was one of the best pieces of animation that Star Wars have ever done. Like that real short snippet, you know, like
which one
right at 10 minutes. I liked all of them, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I liked all of them. My favorite one was Ahsoka with training with the clones. I thought that was epic. I really liked finding out what happened to Yaddle. I thought that was pretty interesting as well. And seeing like Dooku's kind of transition there, because what's really interesting, which if you read some of the books and whatnot, you get it, but you don't realize like what a time frame his turn, like how recent he was a Jedi before you meet him the first time in Clone Wars. You know, I think that's kind of interesting to see. I saw someone tweeted that you could recast or at least animate, you know, Balin Skull and do a Tales of the Jedi, and I just think them stories are so good because they don't have to be multiple seasons. They don't have to be like, you know, 3 episodes long. Just a 10-minute blurb, give them a little bit of a backstory. It allows us all to come on and talk and speculate. So I mean, surely we're all appreciative of that. I just think that concept now is really great. Like Shin, where did she come from? What's her story arc? How did she meet Balin? You know, there's a lot of different parts to that.
I agree.
I think it's
I
the
would
easiest
go
way
for
to
that.
recast him. I like honestly, that's the easiest way to. God, he was so good. I like that is the that's the biggest like it's not going to be a miss. That's going to be the hard way to say it, but that's going to be the biggest thing to replace because I mean, if you listen to any casual fan who watched Ahsoka, anyone who doesn't know anything, they want to know more about him because he was so good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it just sucks that like I mean, we heard that he passed right before they started showing the show, but we didn't realize how much of an impact he was going to have until
Agreed.
it's just so sad, man. It's just like it's frustrating, sad for his family, but also frustrating for fandom. But
Yeah, I got a question for everybody, really, just to like want to throw out there because I think it's interesting to hear everybody's perspective on it, and it's to do with recasting him. And I've seen two arguments here: one that it would be disrespectful to recast him when you've seen what a brilliant job that he has created in this character, or it's actually a sign of immense respect that people loved his character so much that they want to
Yeah.
recast him to carry on the story. Like, which on that side of the coin, where do you guys more sit? Because I don't know if I feel strongly one way or the other. I think initially I was like, can't recast him. Like, that's like, just let him have his moment. But then I heard the other side and was like, there's a story for that.
I was very much anti recasting anybody for a long time, whether it was Luke, Leia, Han, whatever character out there. Like I said before, it was even weird for me to think about Rosario Dawson playing Ahsoka because I was used to Ashley Eckstein. But what I've seen with all these transitions is I think you're right. It's out of respect. The only reason you would recast it's not because you're and these are the living characters, you're not paying them disrespect. You're extending their story and taking it in another direction. Unfortunately for him, it has to be done because people are so interested in that character. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I wouldn't look at a recasting of him as like a money grab or anything. I would almost just look at it as an ode to what he meant to the story and what he created. You would have to. It's funny because I'm sitting here thinking like, what actor would have like his build and his demeanor? And for some reason, I pictured like a gray-haired Mel Gibson taking over that character. Couldn't you see him having like a
Wow.
similar demeanor? I mean, I don't know if that's like. I don't get me wrong. Mel Gibson's probably not ever going to be in a Star Wars film. But
that's better than the one that I saw
Please.
recently. Did you see what Jason Bateman? They took a picture. Someone on the X took a picture of Jason Bateman and put him with a beard and said that Jason Bateman should be the.
He had a presence to him, and that's what made his character so interesting. Is he nonchalantly had a presence, and it made you question what he was doing, and it's why we're still questioning it after the show was over. He did a hell of a job playing the character, and I think that's the best part about Ahsoka is it went into lore and it went into all these things that you can still talk about this and wonder what the hell is going on, and he played a huge role in that. And that's why I think that story has to continue what he started. And I think it's just a damn shame, that all of this happened with him.
I think the best shows always are able to trickle in when the series has fandom lore, trickle that in, but also it's a great show for the casual fan. I know people who have never watched Star Wars watched Ahsoka and are now going back to catch up because it was so gripping and enticing. Yeah, the only person who initially came to mind for me, and I think he's the obvious. Well, he was the obvious initial reaction choice to potentially replace him, and I can't even remember the chap's name. He was Wolverine's brother. He's done a bunch of TV. Is it Ray Donovan? No.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
It's not Liev Schreiber, is it?
Yeah,
I've seen some pictures of the guy you're talking about. I don't know his name, but I know who you're talking about.
I mean, because I can't remember which one of us said it. It certainly wasn't me, but I totally agreed with the statement. He had presence. He had presence doing nothing and standing in a room. Like if he walked into your room, that someone's there.
Yeah.
And how are you able to replicate that easily? And I mean, it's going to be unbelievably difficult task.
Liev Schreiber.
Yeah,
that's
I
the
like
chap.
that.
Yeah,
Right there. Yeah, you
But
put a
with-
beard on him and put him in the robes. I mean,
to be honest, your beard's getting close. Like we'll get a bit more white in this, and
I was
how's
told
how's your presence in a room?
I was told by
Pretty good
big
here.
man.
I was told by several people, and I'm not trying to say the brag, but there was a couple people that looked at me like I had longer hair too, and they're like, "You look like Balin."
Casual brag.
I'll take
I'm here
that.
for it.
I'll own that.
Hey, no, that's fine. I think it's great. I'm hoping they recast because I want to see where the story goes. I don't want it to be where Mandalorian 3 went, which was we lost this main character for what was that show that Cara Dune was going to lead? Rangers of the New
right.
Republic.
New Republic.
So we're going to merge Rangers and Mando into this next season and kind of mix these stories in, right? I don't want to see that. I'd rather them say we're going to continue down the path we're going. And yes, we're going to have to put a new person in there, but I think they can with the people they have in place. They should be able to find the right actor who has that similar presence that he did. And he didn't overly speak, right? I mean, a lot of the things he said
was but when he did, it carried something. Like you said, like he's got a presence. But when he did speak, something about the Jedi, and there's so few of them. It's a shame because there's so few of them. When he had to go kill Ahsoka, like the things he said are memorable.
I don't think he ever wanted to kill Ahsoka either. Like that's something that I always felt was I was saying that last night. I just felt like there was always a level of respect for her there. And it was kind of weird because it made me question, like, what is he doing? What is he up to? So,
well, when Morgan Elsbeth reached out, said something to him about it, didn't she say, "Do I sense fear?" And he said, "No, it's just a shame, right? It would just be a shame if I had to do that." I think that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think it's one of the interesting parts about his character is he also seems to be one of the few people who actually knows who Darth Vader is.
yes.
Like it was that one line where he's like, Anakin spoke highly of you, and they're having that exchange. And then when he says, like, few saw what he became. You're like, well, hang on a minute. Like, who are you? Like, who is your character, dude? Like, tell me now. Because it seems to be such a secret, and a lot of maybe some speculation on some people's part. But, like, he knows. Like, he's saying it not with even a questionable tone. I mean, he's saying it with authority, which I think a lot of what he talks about seems to carry that statement, sort of memorable kind of lines. But it definitely, all this really goes back to say what an unbelievable character that they have created that also was portrayed brilliantly by Ray.
Right.
But I so badly, I just need to know this guy's like story, because it's just.
The other thing that I think they did so well was we all knew deep down they were going to find Ezra before the end of this first series. Whether it was in the last 1 or 2 episodes, there was going to be that, hey, we found him, right? Here he is. But yes, there were some battles between some of Thrawn's people and either Ezra or Ahsoka or Sabine. But there wasn't that massive thing that you can see working in Thrawn's head, right? So we have something in season 2 or something in that future Filoni movie where that master tactician will be able to come out, right? He's going to have this master plan that's going to all come together. And we're going to see a huge battle, right? The Lucas kind of battle where you have something going on in the air, on the ground, and one-on-one, right? So I'm excited about not having to put that in the first season. It's still to come.
Is he really a master tactician? Is he really?
Yes.
Because
Why do you feel
I just
like
don't
he
see
isn't?
it. I just don't see it. Like,
what about, have you read his books?
So here's where we go. And here is the rub. I've listened to Mark Thompson narrate Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and
Last Command.
Another one. The Last Command. I've read that one. The other ones, right? The other books I have not dove into the one with the blue pages, so I am not fully vested in my Chiss mythology. From what we have seen and from what I have seen, there is a lot, and even in the Heir to the Empire stuff, and it's also because I came to those as a 42-year-old man after having everything, and I didn't come to it at the same level when they first were released in the 90s, and it wasn't something that impacted my fandom at the time. I have never seen or had this belief that he is this tactician that is something to be feared. And I don't think the show that they've put on leads you to believe that he is this brilliant tactician.
I think Jack hit something that I'm going to start focusing on. In the books, unless a Jedi was involved, who he was going against, Thrawn won everything. It's when Jedi
or Bendu.
Yes, Bendu or Jedi were against him, he lost. Right? I mean,
Well,
I have to think about that. And I'm going to look back at his books. I'm going to look back at Rebels. But I think you're onto something, Jack. I think he's as close to being Darth Vader or a Jedi without having that. Like, he's got everything else put together, but he can't outsmart what a Jedi is going to do.
Well, to me, if you look at, like, if you were to say his notable losses, let's say, like, he wouldn't have sacrificed that fuel refinery just to see Kanan kick it, which he wasn't even on World when that happened, and he seemed mad when he got back with, was it Governor Pride?
Yes.
Price. So then it's like, oh, are we chalking that up as his loss, or are we chalking that up as her loss? Because to me, what makes him such a brilliant tactician is being able to accept them small defeats and go, yeah, we lost that. And he immediately moves on to the next piece because his bigger picture plan allows him to check, at least I've always felt from a tactical stance, check his ego for his bigger picture prize. And to me, that's what he did every step of the way in Ahsoka. His clear and main objective only was getting off that planet and going. And he basically accepts a few losses to be able to do that. And to me, not that that's, it's a difficult sell when you probably go into the, head honcho's chamber and you're like, okay, we're going to take a couple of losses, but, without following it through. But I guess I've always thought that when he loses, typically, I think we already mentioned it, so for the sake of repeating it, he has to deal with a Bendu, which then suddenly strikes down all of his Star Destroyers and everything in the air when he, granted, shoots it. And then the Purgles come because Ezra's got this, connection to them, which apparently is one of the new things in Star Wars that, Jedi can just feel all these animals and whatnot, which is kind of cool. But, like, I don't think any tactician really can bank on that. And then on the fuel refinery, where he's like advocating for his tight defender program, he has to go back to Coruscant, talk about it. All right, they killed Kanan, but like at the cost of his other thing, and I wouldn't say he was happy about that. So
I love it.
To me, I feel like the recent Thrawn trilogy for me is better than the Heir to the Empire trilogy.
They're fantastic books. I will tell you that. I mean, everything related to Thrawn is fantastic. And I still, deep down in my heart, I'm so excited that at ICCC in Nashville, which, Jack, it's something you should check out. I got to sit there and talk to and have a conversation with Timothy Zahn and get him to sign a book and him talk about Thrawn. That was fantastic. So I will tell you guys, we've gone an hour just talking about Ahsoka. How about I throw some fast questions at you and we just get
Can I throw one more question at you guys? Yeah. Sorry, only if you've got time.
No, I love it.
Oh, this is what we do, Jack.
So one of my other favorite bits that I feel like leads to a bigger question is when it's basically said to us that Thrawn awoken or woke the Night Sisters on Peridia. Not like they were already there. Like somehow he found them, activate, like, got them on his side, and then going like that was. And I'm sure that's the line that like he found them, or he woke them, or they were awoken by him, or something. But like specifically him. And again, when these Purgle take him off, I don't feel like he was like, "Oh, I'm going to end up here." So I feel like that to me was one of them snippets of a line that resonated with me that could become a new Rogue One, where we look at it and go, wow, that one snippet of that one show led to this other movie about the Night Sisters, where many Bothans might have died and brought us Rogue One. Well, I don't know what Thrawn did, but he brought us back the Night Sisters, and that's pretty cool.
So you're a Night Sisters fan?
What's that, sorry?
Are you a Night Sisters fan then?
I'm not into the zombie kind of thing.
Okay.
To be honest with you, like I like the Night Sisters. I like that there's equal ways that the Force or, Force light magic. Yeah, exactly. Magic with a C and a K. Like that. That was pretty cool.
Is that a nod to the Brits? Or
I don't know what it was a nod to, but I just happened to have the subtitles on and it said something about magic. And I'm like, oh, that is not like regular magic. That's got a K. Let's go. I think they're as a race, as a cult, species, whatever. It's really interesting that they also have existed for, a time probably before the Jedi were seen as Jedi Knights. So yes, I'm a big fan of the Night Sisters on the whole. I don't love the idea of them bringing back all them corpses.
Yeah,
because I think that's a little creepy and weird. But hey,
I will tell you
about Enoch though. Like that, that's
who is he?
Right? Like, I mean, that's one story I think that we all have the same kind of feeling on. Like, I feel like it's got the potential to be good, but who the heck is he?
Here's all I want is I want him to be better than Captain Phasma. That's all. Captain Phasma got nothing. They didn't treat her right in the movies at all.
We're just, to be honest with you, I on my Star Wars slight hit list, if you want to call it this. Okay. 8 and 9, episodes 8 and 9 on the whole. I actually thought 7 was a great re-entry point. I really like episode 7, but 8 and 9 on my hit list a little bit. Okay. Just because I feel like they were done.
You're not alone.
Dirty, and a bit of injustice has been had. And what was the there was one other thing that I thought was funny, but I lost it. But I just feel like there's certain things that have been done wrong where we're getting an opportunity to maybe fix them. Oh, Boba Fett. That was that series. And when it came out, my favorite part of that series was the first 3 episodes when he's with the Sand People and he gives them like a little bit more of a background about their culture and their history and their ways, that they're not just savages.
I slaughtered them like animals.
To me, the way that series ramped up, then that Boba season 1 was on my hit list too. So we got 8, 9, and Boba, and that hurts me to say that because when a series came out, I was like, yeah. But I think that's pretty much me with anything Star Wars, really. Like initially, but then once you get like a few weeks out, that show didn't have the right tempo. It was kind of casual, and then they brought in the Mando. So I'm like, wait, is it season 2.5?
Right.
And then by the time it took action, I mean, literally, it was cool to see him riding a Rancor. No doubt. Any fan who says that wasn't cool, they're lying. However, I think you said it earlier. It was just it lacked a little substance, and I guess ultimately that's what I loved about Ahsoka in its entirety, was from start to end. They had a plan. They stuck to the plan.
Yeah.
They developed some character arcs. They created really cool characters, and they've left you without doubt wanting more. So that was that's Jack's hit list on Star Wars, and kind of Ahsoka overview, I guess.
No worries. And D-Doc will tell you the same thing. Alfie and D-Doc will both say, if it leaves you wanting more, then it was a pretty good show. And D-Doc just had to hop off again, so I'm speaking on his behalf there. But yeah, I think we're all in agreement. There were some really good things about Ahsoka. And we're looking forward to seeing where it goes. And now I think we're all waiting until, fresh my memory, Skeleton Crew or Acolyte next?
Ooh.
Skeleton Crew, from what they're saying, and I think it's January.
Yeah,
It's in
okay.
the can. It's just waiting to be released. I think they're waiting to make a full-on announcement. This was like all behind the scenes, leaked information about copyright. And anyways, January-ish, but they're waiting for all of the
strike stuff. Anything
contract
related?
issues.
Yeah.
On all
Okay.
sides. Like the writers are in, but they're also staying in solidarity for the actors.
Fun stuff, man. Fun stuff.
You had some rapid fire questions.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw some things out that were just, I wrote them down as I read some articles yesterday and today. So I just thought, what the heck? Let's talk about them real quick. Guillermo del Toro was writing at one point in time, his entire group was building out a Jabba the Hutt kind of gangster mafia movie. Do you think
Awesome.
I was gonna say, do you think it would have been good, and would what's your overall thought on something like that?
Mine?
Yeah, both of you.
Do you want to take it first?
No, I was gonna let you. You're the guest, man. What you said awesome, so I feel there's more to that though.
Well, yeah, because I think one of the things that makes The Mandalorian so interesting is showing the Star Wars universe is actually really interesting. You don't have to be a Jedi Knight to also have a really amazing story, which I know this is a complete fandom, but there's probably a lot of similarities and things that people can pull out that they can go, oh, well, my friend's, obviously not Grogu, but he does something like this, or, we're loyal to the nth degree, like Mando might be. And obviously the gangsters in Star Wars, if you don't think about Jabba the Hutt or, his whole situation and
menagerie.
Well, yeah. And also then the syndicates and all the different syndicates there are. And, the fact that they have essentially like drugs in the Star Wars world and spice, and death sticks and all this stuff. Like, there's got to be something in that that would be really interesting to know how they do it. Because I'll give an example is I'm not someone who watches the Death Star being built and thinks, how'd they raise the money to do that? I'm just like, that's kind of cool. I like to see that. Happy days. But, as I get a bit older, it's essentially taking like a Han or like a Poe when he was a spice runner.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe let's see what actually being a spice runner looks like and having some heavy stakes. And, even Jabba's backstory about how he became the guy. Because, I feel like when you read, The Phantom Menace, he's not like obviously the main Hutt for me at that point. It is only when it seems like when the pod race then went to Tatooine, that's what helped him like elevate his status within his own like group. So I feel like there has to be some really interesting stories, characters, situations, scenarios that these people must get in. Because again, like Jabba, the fact that there's a whole area that was called like Hutt Space.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, man, they got their own planet.
Exactly, yeah. Which I've been one of the games I used to play. Like, you could go to the planet and it was cool, and it was just like a planet of gangsters, and you're like, this is kind of cool. There's just got to be a lot of interesting things there. And I think I said this to you, Joe, and I saw you. Like, I'm in the nicest way. I would love to meet Daisy Ridley. If she ever wanted to go out on a date, I'm available.
We can make that happen, can't we? We could start something to make that happen, I think.
Please, thank you. But I'm ready for the Skywalkers to not be the center of the Star Wars world, I think, and the more people that kind of can fill it, just makes it seem like it's a bit more diverse than, you know, Jedi Knights, which I love them, by the way. It's very cool, but there's got to be some fun in that they can exploit.
Agreed. Real quick before Brent answers on Jabba, Alfie says, because Brent earlier had said Shin Hati is Rose Tico. Alfie said Shin isn't Rose. She didn't kill Luke Skywalker. So that's one thing. And then Tales of Jabba's Palace, he said, would make a great Disney Plus series. I don't know if either of you have checked that out, but it's a bunch of short stories about the characters at Jabba's Palace. So, and yes, Brent, that is in a book, Alfie said. So
yeah, no, I think
haven't
he
seen
said
that.
He said
It's
he
a
read
great
that in a
story.
book.
Yeah.
He said read that in a book. I was thinking like he was new. The fact that I knew Nal Hutta was because I read it in a book. And
I think so.
That's not correct because there are friends of mine that talk about it, and that's the only reason because I acquire information from those that do read the books. So I'm going to take it a different direction because I think it would be fantastic to see the underworld because those are stories that haven't been told. And I think that's what Boba has and had the ability to try to tell was that kind of underworld. I think that that's kind of the vehicle possible. I would love to see a Tales of Jabba's Palace. I'm not going to read it, so show it to me. The other thing I was going to go to was, had anybody heard that prior to the last year or like week or two? Because I know Rebel Force Radio, who's like the podcast of podcasts, Jimmy and Jason talked about it.
It was on a few different, websites where they post stuff out. But but in the last 2 weeks, I would say. Yeah.
And this sounded like they were writing this in like 2005. This sounded like it was something that wasn't as recent as what they just announced, right? Like, so what it comes to is my understanding of the showbiz business. There are probably 60 to 70 Star Wars stories in some level of production that we don't know about. And just because of the ones that we know about fail, which is true, they've had a shit record for the last, I don't know, since we've been doing the podcast, 3-4 years, they've had a shit record. Not arguing that. That is not what I'm going on. I'm just saying that there's a lot more out there that is in production and that we don't know about that hasn't made it to the leak circles yet. And that's all kind of what what I try to talk about is like, we just don't know what's going on. We don't know what they're writing about. We don't know where we're going. The other one was, I think that same writer, the one that was not Guillermo del Toro. It was
the writer on that.
The writer on that was also writing something about the beginnings of the Jedi.
Which Mangold is doing now.
But here's the thing. If you make that movie and you come up with a new idea, the Filoniites will have your neck. Because of what we talked about when I jumped in. Because if you don't bring in the Mortis and you don't bring in the concept of Mortis into the beginning of the Jedi and the beginning of the Force, people will lose their minds.
Interesting. I like it.
Because it's become, for the super fan, you say that it was controversial. I feel like there are a lot of people that buy into this Mortis arc and buy into this holy trinity of the Force. And I think that if you try to talk about the dawn of the Force without talking about the creation of the planet Mortis and having the Father, the Son, and the Daughter, you are going to have people up in arms.
Okay. I don't doubt that at all because we've built in.
I also feel like that's a Star Wars fandom thing, though. Like you could write the most perfect script ever, and I've seen people throw shade at Ahsoka.
Absolutely.
And I think to me, like when I hear that, I agree with you. Because there's already a precedent set for some things in Star Wars that we have come to accept. But in that show, it would be cool if somebody met them for the first time and you could drip feed them in. And they don't have to become a big part of the show, but they also create a big part of the foundation of what we understand the Force to be. But one of my favorite lines out of Clone Wars was when Yoda basically reiterates about, well, what about everything we don't know about the Force? You know, they make it seem like it's still this thing that, although they have a grasp on, you know, something, they wouldn't be, maybe they would, but like, I never got the sense that they would say, well, we understand 50% of the Force, you know, 10% of the Force. Like, they never give you that number. So I think there would be a nice way of integrating it in, even if it's for a snippet, not like a snippet, because I mean, you'd have to explain it, but be able to set the premise for it, because people didn't just figure it out like willy-nilly. You know, like there had to have been someone who was being guided by something, you know, and for me, that would be when I think of all the problems that would be difficult to overcome, that's not one that I'm like, let's really brainstorm it. You might brainstorm an organic way to, you know, bring it to the forefront, but of all the problems Star Wars faces, I actually love the idea of them going back to the Dawn of the Jedi and figuring out how they, you know, have become what they have become.
Well, I think it's interesting, and you guys went down this path, because I was going to quickly just say, any thoughts on the next 3 movies, but you've already hit on this, so I appreciate that, because it started making me think, whether it's with Mangold's movie or whether it's now with The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, where we see that set of books that Luke has kept and then Rey now has. Do you guys think that Mortis, World Between Worlds, or Bendu is mentioned in any of those books? Do you think that's a part of any of those books, the Jedi text?
I mean, the way when you watch Clone Wars, the way for me it's left that like this is a group that are unheard of.
Okay.
Like that's how I left Clone Wars thinking, was that this wasn't really a very well known thing. But then again, it goes back to, how did Baylan Skoll know about them? Because it clearly seems like he knew something. So whether it's from fairy tales, like I think is what they drop in the series, so they're a little bit more well known than what I think I thought originally.
I lean that they're not well known, and that he is just like, I'm gonna go into lean in that he was kind of like Qui-Gon, that was a book rat and lived in the library and talked to whatever her name is.
Jocasta Nu.
I knew you guys would know it. Like I couldn't remember her name, but like I'm gonna lean in and say I think that he was like he was a library rat, and that he was searching for something like Qui-Gon was searching for something. He's kind of a 21st century Qui-Gon.
I think it's conceivable then that in them very ancient books that they're referenced then.
Okay.
Because again, if you can't have a vast library like that and, you know, have your core pieces of material probably not contain essentially one of the biggest fundamentals of the Force as we know it.
So the book of Alfie just came through and said that it's canon that World Between Worlds is in the books Rey has.
Really? Sure. I didn't know that.
Sure.
So Alfie, we actually call him the Book of Alfie. That's actually what he goes by on X/Twitter, because if we have a question, we just ask, and Alfie usually
see it now.
has an answer. And he said, as far as the...
How do you just know that? I love that someone just knows this. It's brilliant.
But the Guillermo movie, he said it was known about during Solo, and that sets were being built. It was known about then, and it died when Solo kind of tanked. So Alfie again, bringing the heat.
Hot take.
I mean, so you'd have to understand Alfie. If he's not critiquing somebody's outfits, he's spending time diving into research on Star Wars.
Well, I got 2 questions then for him. Well, one hot take and then one question.
Shoot him out.
We'll start.
He'll answer if he's in the chat.
We'll start with a question. So, throughout Rebels, Ezra has a green lightsaber. Suddenly, they make a big deal out of everybody going and getting their kyber crystal, which apparently is not colored right originally until it changes, and then it changes based on the Jedi. How does he end up with a blue lightsaber? Sorry, in Ahsoka right at the end.
That was Kanan.
Oh, didn't he make a new one? Did he make an?
He
I
made
don't
he
know.
made a new one. So unless
But
he
he had
has
Kanan's. But
unless he
had
has the
Kanan's
crystal,
Okay.
well,
I thought
Uh,
I picked up on Hawaii Hang Yajangong talking about him pulling the Kyber crystal from Kanan's, and he made a replica of Kanan's saber.
oh really? I might have to rewatch that.
That
part.
was in that last. It was in the last episode when they were putting it together. Old Hwangy Yangi put it. I just don't know how to say his
Yang.
name.
Oh, I thought it was a reference to whatever type of whatever type of hilt he had was what.
And it might be, and I thought it was also the Kyber crystal that he had. But yes, it was a reference to the hilt. Like he made a replica hilt of Kanan's,
Okay.
as like
So-
a tribute to Kanan. But
Alfie will answer that one. What's your other hot take or question?
I really feel like Solo is a way better movie than what people give it credit for.
it was poor timing.
Yep, it got caught in a real mess because I
It
was
was-
very leery of a new character, like I said back at that time. But Alfie said it 100 times. Once you got into the movie, didn't even affect you. You just started watching the movie like this was a young Han Solo.
But I guess there was a lot of negativity around it. I know they changed directors, and I can't remember the chap's name who played a young Han. He was taking a lot of heat. When the movie came out, I'm like, well, you want to see how Harrison Ford or like how Han Solo became Han Solo. He didn't just arrive like this is how I am all the time. Like he had a personal development, which I just thought was. People went into that movie thinking Harrison Ford, and I'm like, no, you need to go in with this perspective of this is how he becomes the person that we see him as now later in his life. And I told someone that the other day, and they just thought that was one of the most controversial things they had heard in Star Wars for a while. And I really don't think it's that bad, but apparently it's a slightly hot take.
So the other hot take that goes connected to this is did Donald Glover catch as much heat for playing a young Lando as Alden Ehrenreich did for a Han Solo?
Not even a tiny bit. If anything, it was praised, wasn't he? I think.
They want him to do more.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to write now. It's going to turn in. They were going to do a series. Now it's turned into a movie. So,
I mean, look,
least favorite characters across Star Wars.
Alfie says he was Han by the end of the movie. If there had been a sequel, I would have watched it without leaving my seat. I agree. I think
he used the robot spare parts, and the top of it was a crystal from Kanan.
there you go.
Okay.
So see, Alfie's on top of it.
Thank
You have
you
the
to the
question,
book
you
of
have the
Alfie.
question about colors. You have the question about colors, but you have Luke, and he goes from blue to green, and like, I don't know.
Come on, Brent. In some of the Marvel comics during the 70s, Luke had a
Sure,
yellow
Marvel
lightsaber.
Comics. Let's talk about another medium that only about 45 people read.
I just got 3 today. What are you on about?
Come on. He had 44
The
other
original
people
run? Are you
besides
into the
him.
original
Yeah.
run of the Marvel Comics?
No, I've been on the Darth Vader comic line now, and then the Mando or the Mandalorian's just come out with one like side arc as well. So I don't like starting things like halfway through. Hey, there you go.
This is the where they compiled all the ones from the 70s into a book. So
Joe, what I'm impressed with is because I know you had said you'd only just moved, but the studio is studioable to have a podcast, and who knows how the living room's getting on. But I love that the sign's up, your bookcase is there.
He's got to get the figures out, though, right? Right. Like, I mean, the only thing listed is the figures, right?
Yeah, I got to get those out. I got to have some display of those.
Mine are all in my guest room. I need to bring them out. So I went to Disney a few weeks ago, and I built a lightsaber, which I thought was cool. But I also got a Sith and Jedi holocron too, and people have seen it and they're like, "What is this?" And I'm like, I don't have time to explain it to you. Oh, that's pretty cool.
So this is what I was doing at the very beginning while we were talking about Mortis. I was paying attention, but it is a Marvel Crisis Protocol toy, and this is the Red Skull.
Mm-hmm.
He goes inside of this Hydra tank.
Nice.
And so like I still got some work to do on it, but that was what I was working on.
Jack, if you ever want some cool miniature stuff and for somebody to paint them up, Brent's your guy.
Oh, okay. I never really
He's
got into like them. I've done a lot of. I mean, recently.
oh, that is
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
badass.
Yeah, I like that.
Tauntaun Rider.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
They have
Love
a
it.
rule that they can ram into something and cause some damage.
Nice.
They go full speed into them and ram their head into them.
Hey.
Trading cards is probably the thing that I've gotten into
Yeah.
the most in the last 6 months, I guess. And anyway, I actually got a C3PO Super Refractor 1/1 that came back from grading today. It didn't get graded nearly as well as I thought or hoped it should have, which was a
What did
bummer.
it get?
But it got an 8.
Ooh, okay.
I know, that's exactly when I saw it. And then anyway, I had a Mando card get graded and it came back a 10. So I mean, you got to take the wins and the losses together. But I was pretty bummed.
There is a thing that Alfie and I have gone to quite a bit over the past 2 or 3 years. It's called the Great Ohio Toy Show. It's in a town called Xenia, Ohio, over near Dayton. And they do it once in March and once in October, I think, every year. And while it's full of toys, Alfie wanted me to remind you, he and I just went recently, and the amount of trading cards, and especially Star Wars trading cards, was off
on
the
the
charts.
rise.
Yeah, so he was like, Jack would go crazy in this place.
I'd have spent way too much money. I can't help it. Like when I'm in a place like that, and it's just there, it just feels rude not to.
Yeah,
you got to keep these people in business.
That's right.
Support local.
You got to keep the community going.
You got to
the economy, get the local economy.
Yeah, that's fun.
I can tell you what, right now, I have other questions that I'm looking at, and all of that's in my head is, how do I make it to where I introduce Jack to Daisy Ridley and then get him in the next Star Wars movie with her?
I think they're two things that should stay at the forefront of your mind as well. Okay, like don't worry about the other questions. We'll get to them another time. Don't panic. However, that could be that's like mission critical right now. That's this is like trying to do we're trying to jump in parsecs here. We're not messing.
Nope. You know what? We'll put an all points bulletin on this, and we'll get everybody in the Star Wars community pushing to ship this up. So
even an X comment like I would take right now. You got to start somewhere.
We'll work on it.
She's British. I'm British. She was a Jedi. I practically am in my head. I mean, we've got a lot of. I got three lightsabers. Like, come on, I want more than she does at this point.
So you were just at Disney. Were you at Disney World or Disneyland? In Florida or California?
I was in Florida.
Okay. So D-Doc's going to go at the end of November, and he's going to go to Galaxy's Edge. And then the first week of December, I'm going to go with Joey. My wife and I are going to go with Joey, his wife, and his son. And we're going to go to all the parks together and see our grandson, being crazy and all that. But it came up. I found an article today that rumor has it that the Galactic Star Cruiser, even though they're mothballing it, they've been really putting out a lot of exit questionnaires and things like that to people who did go to it to say, how would you improve it and what would you do differently?
Hopefully the cost was the number one thing they talk about.
Probably. So, I mean, I got to find out if there's a way for them to get around this tax write-off that they did, because the tax write-off was based on them shutting it down completely and not using it again. But I mean, what if that thing comes back and it comes back with the way Star Wars fans want it to be instead of the way Disney wants it to be? I mean, that could be crazy.
I think to me, like for Disney, like as a fan, you're going to give them your money. Like you're going to spend it. But what they asked for that, I just thought was ludicrous, honestly. Like a 2-night stay that's costing you, what was it, about $5,000?
Yep.
I mean, that's suddenly taken something that, needs to be out there for everybody to enjoy, but its core fans are the people who are going to really enjoy it. Also, now you've priced them out of the market, and that didn't feel good, because even if someone said, "Hey, you want to go and do this?" you'd probably be like, "Well, there's probably something else we could spend that on for 2 nights." You know, like we could probably all go to Mexico for 2 weeks on that sort of money. They clearly have invested a lot into it, and I'm sure they've got some unbelievable props and a lot of infrastructure in place for it to be successful. But I think that's the moment where that corporate vibe has to also match what the fandom wants, because in this moment it's failed.
Yep.
And it could have been so much different and perhaps so much better. And you'll notice it. To me, going into it's Bantu, right? That's
Batu.
Batu. That was one of the coolest things, because when you get there, I mean, you feel like you have left Florida and you are just in a completely different area. And it's so amazing and it's so well done. And, even from things like even trash cans are, nice and, everything that you want it to be, it is. So then you're like, okay, I'm sure doing a hotel that way is expensive, but that whole adventure could have been different.
But it goes back to what you've said also about what you want to see. You said, and this is also another tweet that went out, which I don't know if it's Joe wanted to talk about. You said that you want to move past the Skywalker completely and not bring them up. There's a guy who just put out a tweet, and I don't know the context of the tweet. I didn't read all of it. I just read
Matthew
the headline.
Vaughn
Said that he thinks that it should be a reboot of only the Skywalkers. And what I feel, and this is just from the fans that I talk to and the people that I am connected with, if it doesn't have a Skywalker, there is a percentage of the population that will have nothing to do with it. There's a percentage of the fandom that will have nothing to do with it.
I guess I'm not opposed to them being involved in these kind of things. I guess if you're talking about new material, for the direction.
I'm going park-wise too, right? So, when you talk about going to the park, they want to see Skywalker Saga stuff in the park.
Yeah, I guess I don't really have a problem with that. I'm talking when I'm kind of ready to move past the Skywalkers. It's in new content and new material, not nostalgia that gives you that feeling. If you were walking around a Star Wars or the Star Wars park at Disney and you saw Darth Vader, you'd have kids out there who would freak out, not just because they're excited, but because they're probably a little bit nervous as well. So I don't want to just get rid of them and go, as a fans, we have moved on from you, because when I see Luke Skywalker, I'm like, you're cool. And when I saw Rey in the park as a Disney princess, I practically gave her my phone number without her even asking, so for me, moving on from the Skywalkers, and perhaps I should clarify this, is purely out of new content material for upcoming shows. And I thought Luke Skywalker coming back in Mando was just the most awesome thing I've seen in a long time. But I'm not ready to get rid of them out of nostalgia, because the C-3PO that I pulled, I just thought was banging, because he's one of the OGs. You really can't like Star Wars and not have an appreciation for maybe 8 characters, 10 characters.
Sure.
And if you can't get on board with that group of 10, then Star Wars isn't your jam.
Right.
Okay,
I agree with that too.
Walt Disney is no longer with us. We know that. He's been gone for quite a while.
Really?
But when we have Disney World and we have Disneyland and we have Euro Disney and we have Japan Disney, and I'm sure there's another one coming about that I don't know about, but each one of those parks, they don't build them and say, hey, I've got a really good idea. No Mickey and Minnie. Just leave them out. Let's go with this one's going to be a Lightning McQueen only park. That's it. No Mickey and Minnie. They don't do that. At each one of those places, Mickey's right there. The statue of Mickey is looking up at the castle. He's in
your face.
Yeah. So I get it. It is time. I'm fine with moving on with the storyline, but it's like you can't forget the base. You can't forget
Sure.
what got you here,
Oh.
right? That's what I'm saying. And I wouldn't even need Luke to be in the new Galactic Star Cruiser if that's what they're going to do. But make it to where it feels there's parts of it that are for people 50 years old who grew up with the original trilogy. There's parts that are for the prequel trilogy and the sequel trilogy. Make it to where there's a feel for all those people and not just, hey, this is where you are and you get none of the rest of it, right?
I know this is a podcast for Star Wars, but not to make it about Disney. But I actually think that's something that they, within all of their parks, have actually done very well. Like there's some, when you go, like, even for me and like my childhood, there's some nostalgia when you walk around. And then we were there, me and my sister were there with my two older cousins and their kids. One of them's our goddaughter. And they were excited about someone that me and my sister didn't really know because we haven't been immersed in the Disney world, recently. But then my older cousins were excited about something that me and my sister were like, vintage,
The Peter Pan ride.
Yeah, or something like that. And yeah, I mean, look, one of my favorite characters, or two of my favorite characters, will forever be Luke Skywalker and Han Solo. And seeing them walk around would just be insane, and doing anything that still has them involved, as from a nostalgic stance, I think is great. I just, when it comes to, and I think the series is showing it can stand it. Mandalorian, Ahsoka.
Mhm.
I don't know. I just feel like the fandom, the universe could grow, but you're not looking to. At no point would I ever want to get rid of them because I feel like you're, giving away or like trying to get rid of the people who've made this be what it is.
Yep, that's where I am as well. I will hit you guys with one last question, and then I'll let you go because we've been going for quite a while here. And I saw this again. I don't remember which website it was on, so I apologize if you wrote this article. Thank you, and I'll make it up to you by commenting on it again in the future. When looking back at the sequel trilogy, which was the biggest mistake? Was it A, bringing back Palpatine, or B, killing off Kylo/Ben?
Out of the two.
What's that?
Out of them two, just them two.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
No, I didn't mean it quite that way.
I mean,
I thought there was going to be like a B and a C, or like
No,
a C and
no.
a D. I saw something similar to that, and one of the options also was they killed Snoke too early, which I think that's my biggest grievance
Okay.
with 8.
which almost forced Palpatine to come back, right? By killing Snoke off.
Agreed.
You forced the return of Palpatine. So I could tie it in and link it that way.
And like kind of going on a little bit of a theme that we've chatted about, Bob having the opportunity to come back and like show some of like his prowess, which was cool. Luke Skywalker coming back and taking down the Dark Troopers, cool. Darth Vader in Rogue One in the hallway, cool. They had a moment where they could have made Palpatine actually seem like even more of the badass that he clearly was, where when you see him do most things outside of episode 3, he's just hand lightning you all the time. And at some point, like, maybe just pull your lightsaber out, bro. So I guess if you're talking about future material, I'm sad that they killed off Ben. And I'm not sad that Palpatine's hopefully I just feel like we're not done with that, but like you can't keep bringing people back.
Right.
And I think that's probably more of my grievance on it, that, it kind of, what happens at the end of 6 is like one of the biggest, most fundamental parts of the Star Wars story, period. And you bringing him back, you're like, well, it wasn't like it. We got you. Like you thought it, but we got you. And I don't like that. So for me, the bigger mistake is that he shouldn't have been there in the first place. But also for like new material, you know, I would have rather Ben Solo be able to remain. But I have a lot of feelings about that. And the worst thing is I remember leaving The Last Jedi, and I had an experience that I've not had with a Star Wars anything before, and I left unsure how I felt. And I don't like that. I don't want to leave that way. I want to leave like I left Ahsoka, where, you know, several times I had some buddies over watching it because, you know, we're cool and we'd have Star Wars watch parties occasionally. Where like I was like standing up. I was like so shocked at what had just happened. I was standing up with excitement. At the end of The Last Jedi, I'm like, where are we going with this? And it was confusion, but not but not curiosity. It was bad curiosity. You know, so to limit that just to two questions, was it this or was it that? I'm like, oh no. It's a little bit beyond that for me. I would have liked.
We're gonna need to have him on with T-Bob, aren't we?
We could totally set that to right.
T-Bob and him would be fun. Just let him sit there for an hour and just go.
Well, but it's. I'm gonna go because you read all. How many of the books did you read going into Last Jedi? How much of the Star Wars literature did you consume before Last Jedi?
I tried to read a majority of the books coming out that were, I assumed, telling me things to prep for or lead me into that story.
Well,
yeah,
I'm talking like so about 50. Like you read all of like you had gone through the 90s and you had read all of that literature.
I'd read every novel from 1978 until then. Yeah.
Jack, how much had you?
High, like
so
again.
So you were a book kid, right? Like you were deep into the books as you were growing up.
Do you know, honestly, I guess my Star Wars fandom for books came middle teens, I guess, and then when I consumed it, I just consumed a lot of it. So I had read the storyline of where, you know, Palpatine had been a clone, and even when I read it, I was like, it doesn't sit well with me.
So it's not necessarily the Palpatine clone piece, but it comes into what I believe is the fundamental difference and divide is the Star Wars fans that consumed the Star Wars literature prior to The Last Jedi did not like the Luke Skywalker that they saw on screen because it didn't jive with the Luke Skywalker that was in the literature that they had been consuming, versus the people that had absolutely no idea of the Luke Skywalker in those literatures and were just visual Star Wars fans. And I think that is probably the biggest divide, is that there was an expectation of the Luke you were going to see did not match what was on screen. And then it didn't help that the director was arrogant and said that because and I'm getting like people who listen to this probably will hate what I have to say, but like so Ryan Johnson said to Mark Hamill, you are not Luke Skywalker, you are the actor that plays Luke Skywalker, which is an accurate statement. Right. Like I told you, Jack, I'm going to make it's an accurate statement. You can't deny the logic of that statement.
I think that to me is it's so lacking of respect, not just for the character, but for the series as well. Like, is Han Solo Harrison Ford?
And that's why that's why they didn't like Alden Ehrenreich, because.
But then can I counter then?
What's that?
Go ahead. I counter? But then, okay, but Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian, with a director who clearly loves Star Wars, with people who understand it, gave also the fans what they were expecting to see. when he comes in his X-wing, kicks ass and takes names.
Absolutely.
The fact that do you know, I even feel conflicted about Rian Johnson because I love Knives Out and like the movies that he's doing there, and they're so complex and they're really interesting. But I'm like, how could you not figure this out? Because as soon as they said that some of this was Legends, I'm like, okay, let them do their own thing. Like the movies, you know, I love reading Marvel comics, so you can go in some of the movies, understanding there could be, you know, bigger picture over here that they may follow, but ultimately the movies can do what the movies want to do. Yeah, I don't know about that.
I'm not disagreeing with you saying that it is. That's why I said he was arrogant when he said it. But like, if you take it at its word, he is not Luke Skywalker. He is the actor who portrays Luke Skywalker, which is true. But he also has had 30 years of living with the character to know, and you probably should kind of listen to what that guy has to say, right? But
yeah,
so
yeah.
So he, and just making those statements public, right? And then the other thing too is Mark Hamill did not do The Last Jedi any help when he was on his press tours, because he went around saying that he played Jake Skywalker and not Luke Skywalker. And that gave every Star Wars superfan ammunition to bitch and hate on The Last Jedi. It wasn't like I'm going to condemn you in private, but I'm going to support it in public. Like, I'm sure there are actors that don't like the projects that they're on and talk about, oh, it was a great project and I loved working with these people, and they fucking hated it. Right? I'm sure that happens. Like, and they go out and do that. But like Mark was like, nah, I'm just going to hate on it, which allowed everybody to shit on it and caused the fan base to shit on Rian Johnson. And
it is after dark
right now.
And then did a full 180 after all of it.
But I think what's interesting then, you know, because a lot of these people are highly intelligent. If you're looking at it going, right, well, we need him to come in and just play Luke Skywalker the best he can because the fans love him and all these things, wouldn't a smart director have also potentially turned around and gone, help me help you make this a success?
Not one that's arrogant and thinks that he knows better.
You know, like, to me, I just felt like in the same moment, then Rian Johnson is just a director of one Star Wars, where
it fundamentally changed Star Wars, and
it
changed the fan base. It fundamentally changed the fan base.
I agree. I've always struggled with the fact that like some people who don't know Star Wars, like if you don't know Star Wars and you just watched The Last Jedi, I think it's a good movie. It doesn't flow with the rest of Star Wars at all.
Right.
And okay, it probably creates some good comic book lines, which I feel like you might not be reading. However, it doesn't do anything for like the broad picture, because is Daniel Radcliffe Harry Potter? I mean, yeah. I would struggle to see someone else playing him unless it was in a time era that was so ridiculous that he couldn't be him. Which I think is why I was which is think is why I'm okay with Solo being portrayed two ways. You can't make Han Solo look that young now. So if it's in a massively different period, I could deal with it. I could have dealt with, is it Sebastian Stan? I could have accepted him as Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian if they went that route instead of the
CGI stuff.
Yeah, I could have. I really could have. But to me, in our period of time, in the timeline being accurate, Mark Hamill is Luke Skywalker. And the fact that Rian Johnson couldn't accept that and then killed him off, which I thought that sequence was cool, seeing him be able to take himself to another planet. I thought that was epic. Maybe one of my favorite scenes in Star Wars ever, by the way. Have a bit of respect for the guy. Like, this fandom's bigger than you. I just don't like that.
Yeah.
Fair. So,
I love it. I gave you A and B.
And we've done to leave, and we're like that.
But like, I feel like
on.
it's the equivalent of like, is Pete Rose a Hall of Fame? right? Like, I mean, like it's the one thing that we can talk.
I don't-
What do you think about the sequel trilogies? Here we go. But
Might have to-
everyone has an opinion on them, right?
I'm
Like,
gonna have to Google Pete Rose in a second.
oh, he's a baseball player who bet on baseball and they kicked him out, and he was like a Hall of Fame baseball player, but because he bet on
Yes, but
baseball,
Luke didn't have to bet on baseball. That's the problem in all of this.
Luke
didn't have
Skywalker
to
is
bet
him.
on baseball. He could have
and
just
I'm not-
remained Luke.
Let's just we'll do a whole episode on.
Joe
7,
told me
8,
we were
9.
getting ready to
Another
wrap
one,
it up. I
another
hopped on here and I
So-
hear Last Jedi talk. I love it. I
So
love
here's
it.
the deal. Here's the deal. Because Joe asked the question, D-Doc, what was the bigger mistake of the sequel trilogies? And he gave us option one. Right. No, hold on. He gave us option one, bringing back Palpatine, or option two, killing off Kylo. Those were the only two options we got to choose of the whole
Sheesh.
mistakes of the sequel trilogy. How can you accurately talk about the mistakes of the sequel trilogy without bringing up the conversation that we were just talking about?
Man,
I
Go back to
clearly-
the go back to the original question.
I'd go bringing back Palpatine though. That would be where I would go with that.
I think so too, but like I think a lot of this stems from the fact that you had to bring back Palpatine because the fan base was so splintered, and they wanted to see somebody that's connected to the Skywalker saga because they didn't have the foresight to bring in a big bad that could rival.
Then make it Darth Jar Jar. Then come on,
Hey,
Ryan
Darth
Jar
Johnson.
Jar.
I'm going to tie this up in a nice little bow because we're talking about Palpatine. And I will say this, Jack Harvey, just know that when I sat down and spoke with Ian McDermott, one of the conversations I had for him was talking about you.
That's
because it was,
so cool.
It was 2 days before the 500, and I
Let's
said,
go.
I was like, Mr. McDermott, you please, if you, he said he was going to check out the 500. I said, you have to root for Jack Harvey. He's a British racer who we know. And I said, you got to support your countrymen. And he
Thank
said,
you.
I will be checking that out and cheering on Jack. And I said,
Well, fingers
okay.
crossed he does. That was cool. Thank you.
Fingers crossed that he does.
So
Yeah.
see, it's all synergy. It's all brought together. Now, if I can talk to Ian McDermott, I really think I can pull off talking to Daisy Ridley. We'll make this happen.
Yes, please. I mean, all these other conversations are great and they're a lot of fun. However, let's not lose sight of what our primary goal is here. Okay, we are looking to find a date. I'll fly back to the UK if she, if that's where she's hanging out right now.
I'm being selfish.
She's probably in
because
LA.
If I make it happen, I just want to do a double date with Lori and I, or a triple date if Joey wants to go as well with Riley, and we hang out with you and
Done. Let's do
Daisy.
it.
So
I've got so many questions to ask her
If
as well.
anything has taught us anything, talking about it on podcasts makes it happen.
yes.
Let's bring her on.
I
If you text me one day and be like, you need to be on this podcast, I'll be like, oh, Daisy's on. Daisy's on. Let's go.
Jack, now wait a minute. Now we've had actual conversations with Femi Taylor, who played Ula, the dancer in Jabba's palace. We've had conversations with Ian McDermott. We've had conversations with Vanessa Marshall, who played Hera in Rebels. So we're in touch with the Star Wars community.
Please.
I mean, we can make it
Yeah,
happen.
the larger Star Wars community.
Let's go. What are we waiting for then?
All right.
You have more
did bring
luck trying to
D-Doc
pull
into-
this one than we do.
I did bring D-Doc in to shut it down because I don't have all the tools here to make that happen
That's
at
fine.
the.
But
new
Joe,
I'm enjoying
studio,
that was funny though. Like right at the end, as you're kind of getting ready to wrap
That's a
up, you
loaded
just threw
topic.
one thermal detonator in there just to be like, yeah, okay, I'm trying to go, but poof.
Right. He's gonna I got
sorry.
one quick question.
Just before we wrap it up here, let
Option
me
one
just
or
throw
two?
out two
Yeah.
questions that are some of the most controversial questions in Star Wars history.
The most controversial thing. How do you feel about sequels? Go. And okay, we gotta go. Bye bye.
And here we go for another hour and a half.
Oh,
I feel like I should just be doing the trench run right now. I feel like I could make that shot all over.
Stay on
again.
target.
I'm in.
Stay on target.
gosh. All right. Well, I'll
Stay on
give you my
target.
wrap up.
I'm
I'm
breaking
going to give you my wrap up. Daggone it. Porkins, quit it. Tomorrow night, if you're
Hey, Mark,
Friday
I'm done.
night, if
I'm
you're
on the
around
surface, I'm
Central
on the tower.
Indiana, come do trivia with Brent and I on the south side of Indy. Reach out to us. We'll be running trivia at Dice Walk.
Here's a
How
free
south
question for you.
side?
Here's a free question for you. If anybody listens, they probably won't listen before. What is the percentage of U.S. adults that pretend they're not home on Halloween? Well, according to like a YouGov survey, what's the percentage of
68%?
68. The number from the survey was 20.
Oh no, they're lying. They're lying. They lied to the survey.
Over 50%.
Because I'm one of them. I'm one of them 20. Put everything down, turn it off, just sit in the dark.
Yep.
Oh, God.
Have a think about my
way
life.
more popular now. That has become like just set the bowl out and like just grab one piece, like my daughter.
Wait, is this Star Wars trivia or just trivia?
Trivia, overall
trivia. General trivia. And since we're in Halloween, there's some Halloween movie trivia. There's some like general Halloween trivia. Do you know what? Okay, the next free question would be then: what is the most popular Halloween candy?
Reese's Piece.
Not Piece. Reese's Peanut Butter Cup.
Oh, that's got to be worth a half a point right there. I'm not even from here. And I knew that was from here.
The cup is so much better than the pieces.
Yeah.
The peanut M&M.
Except for E.T. He
recently had Hershey Park.
I did have a cup of tea earlier. I was all happy. I got it in on time, even though I was a minute late.
You're good. D-Doc, thanks for coming back to shut it down. Brent, any closing thoughts, Mr. Dykman?
No, I'm good. Thanks for the chat. Thanks for answering the questions. Thanks for the education on the Mortis arc, which I will continue to be confused on, even though you talked to me about it. This is probably the fourth time it's been explained to me, but I still don't get it. It also reminds me of Lost, man. Like that's my problem. I guess the other problem is like it's the J.J. Abrams Lost. It's like what's his name, Jack, and have you ever watched it?
Nope.
It's basically there's a light and a dark side to the island, and like they fight for each other perpetually, and that's basically like Mortis. But
there we go.
J.J. Abrams was just built for Star Wars, man. He was just ready for it.
He just can't land the plane. I think that's what Alfie says. He does a good job of like creating the intrigue and like keeping you around and giving you the curiosity. He just has a terrible time landing the plane.
I just get rid of Rian Johnson, give him a sequel, like let him do the whole trilogy, and we're landing on water.
Hey man, Rian Johnson got a trilogy.
I still refuse to watch the Glass Onion movies. I don't care how many good reviews I see on the Glass Onion movies. I will not watch them.
Did you watch the first one? Did you watch Knives Out?
They're pretty good. I got to admit.
Glass Onion is the second one. Yeah. Knives Out was the first one. Glass Onion was the second one.
Yes, but it sounds to me like it's Murder on the Orient Express with an all-star cast. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, and I wasn't too.
It's pretty good.
I wasn't too impressed with his like, the guy who solved the case, like his Sherlock Holmes type character. I wasn't too impressed.
Daniel Craig?
Yeah, I was talking about the way that it was written. I like Daniel Craig.
Okay,
don't get me wrong. I'm talking about
not hit James Bond area.
Here we go. I'm talking about the Knives Out. Whoever was the lead investigator, he just seemed dumb and lucked into stuff, and like I wasn't a fan of the way that character was written.
Yeah, I'm glad that I watched Knives Out and The Glass Onion. Because it has slightly remedied a little bit of my disdain for
Maybe
Rian
I'll take
Johnson.
That advice, then. I'll take
to the point where I now feel not quite neutral, but a few percent under neutral about him now.
I think my favorite part about Knives Out is after they solve the crime, the maid comes out and puts her hand out and a broom flies into her hand. I thought that was a great way to finish Knives Out.
Broom Boy, way to try to bring in Broom Boy. Way to try to bring Broom Boy in. No, everyone wants to know what the hell happened to Broom Boy. Hey, Balin's skull.
I don't even know what we're on about now.
Last Jedi, the
Broom Boy.
Oh yeah,
Broom Boy.
Yeah. Okay. See, that's just another comment. It's just another thing.
Right, but there's only two things that were wrong. There were only two things that were wrong.
Okay, all right.
I'm done.
Okay, I'm done too. Jack, thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you, guys.
This was so much fun, and I'll be back by your place because I'm going back to that Italian bakery. So you just tell me when you're there to show it off.
Right.
And D-Doc, thank you so much for opening and closing the show. Brent, thanks for showing up and getting us prepped for trivia tomorrow night. This was great. Chapter 235, A Rule of the Galaxy. This is the live show. The podcast will be out in a day or so. So for all you fans, Jack, thanks for being a guest. We will see you in a week. And until then, may the force be with you.